The problem with the mail-in voting, number one, you're never going to know when the election's over. We are going to have an election that takes place on a beautiful day, November 3rd. And usually at the end of the evening, they say, Donald Trump has won the election. Donald Trump is your new president. Whatever they say, you know what? You're not going to know this, possibly, if you really did it right, for months or for years. Because these ballots are all going to be lost. They're going to be gone.
If he were a paid agent of a foreign country, he could not be more effective in undermining the institutions of American democracy. And in an op-ed for the Washington Post titled, "Trump is actively working to undermine the Postal Service and every major U.S. institution," retired Navy Admiral William McRaven, former commander of the U.S. Special Operation Command, the ones who hunted down and killed bin Laden, writes in part this: "Today, as we struggle with social upheaval, soaring debt, record unemployment, a runaway pandemic, and rising threats from China and Russia, President Trump is actively working to undermine every major institution in this country. He has planted the seeds of doubt in the minds of many Americans that our institutions aren't functioning properly. And if the president doesn't trust the intelligence community, law enforcement, the press, the military, the Supreme Court, the medical professionals, elected officials, and the postal workers, then why should we? And if Americans stop believing in the system of institutions, then what is left but chaos? And who can bring order out of chaos? Only Trump. It is the theme of every autocrat who ever seized power or tried to hold on to it." Let's bring in right now staff writers for The Atlantic magazine, David Frum and Anne Applebaum. Anne's latest book is titled The Twilight of Democracy: The Seductive Lure of Authoritarianism. Also with us, columnist for The Washington Post, George Will. And what is so interesting about this collection of people is, Anne, as you write about it in your book, there was a time not so long ago where we would all be considered right-of-center conservatives, economic conservatives who believed in liberal, traditionally liberal views of the economy, of free trade, of smaller government. And of course, I think most of us were defined by the Cold War and our belief in the superiority of our system over the old Soviet system. But you saw what William McRaven said today, and suddenly the word conservative, not only in this country, but as you describe in countries across the globe, is far different than what it was just a few years ago.
Yes, that's correct. Look, the conservative movement as it was in the 1980s or 1990s was really a coalition, and it was held together by dislike of the Soviet Union, by anti-communism. But actually, the people who were members of it were motivated by many different things. Some of them were free marketeers, some of them were Christians, some of them were in favor of realpolitik, and therefore they opposed the Soviet geopolitics. And when the Cold War broke up, it took some time, but that coalition eventually broke up too. And lots of people who were members of it found that in the post-Cold War era, they didn't have that much in common with one another anymore. And what we're seeing in a lot of countries is the breakup of what used to be called the conservative movement into different groups, very often into a radical, often authoritarian or anti-democratic group, and others who see themselves as still part of a democratic mainstream, who still believe in conservative ideas about economics and about how government should run.
And George Will, I grew up, of course, reading your columns, reading your books as a conservative. And I know you find yourself, and David finds himself, and I find myself in the same position that Anne writes about regarding friends that she's had for decades that no longer consider themselves friends because of politics. And she said, we found ourselves on opposite sides of a profound divide, one that runs through not only what used to be the Polish right, but also the old Hungarian right, the Spanish right, the French right, the Italian right, and with some differences, the British right and the American right, too. This is not just about Donald Trump, is it?
No, it's not. And what makes Anne's book such a bracing read is this. Anne is a transatlantic figure. She's lived from Poland to London to Washington. She knows the conservative movement in its many manifestations. And what she is writing about, and what I think we're experiencing today, is the Europeanization of American conservatism. European conservatives, in a sense, have a history of throne and altar, blood and soil, tribalism. American conservatism, quite different, welcomed the individualism and the churning of American capitalism. The crowning irony of the last 3 years or so is that Donald Trump, setting out to make America great again, set out to make America more European, in the sense that it has injected this kind of tribalism and made it normal in our politics. This has coincided with the fact that a lot of American conservatives are shocked because they are Christians and the society is increasingly secular. And third, American conservatives have bought into the cult of victimization. They like to feel that they are put upon by academics, Hollywood, the media, and all the rest, and that they are an embattled minority in their own country. This makes for a very toxic brood.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.